Welcome to the Busy Guy Show. My name is Vince LoCascio, and I'm a busy guy. I've got Greg Miller today. He's an avid die-cast car collector. We're going to learn a little bit about the history of die-cast cars, and then when we come back, we're going to take a little break, come back, and get to see some of these cars. So this show should be running in during December, but so I want to take this opportunity to wish everybody a happy holidays. And thanks for watching. We're almost up to 50 shows, thanks to this wonderful crew that we have here. So we'll get started and welcome our busy guy today, Greg Miller. Greg?
Pleased to be here.
Thanks for being on the show. We're going to find out approximately how many cars you have later, but how did you get started collecting die-cast cars?
You know, my dad was really into cars, so every couple of years he got a brand new car, had hard tops, convertibles. First time I ever drove a car was when I was 9 years old. Grew up working in gas stations, had an antique car restoration business that was play and business mixture in the 70s while I was going to college. When you move off the farm and you move into town, neighbors don't appreciate you having a number of cars sitting around, so I switched to toys.
Little less space.
Little less space. Neighbors are a lot happier when you have them inside the house versus sitting around the outside.
Nice. Well, let me ask you, we could talk briefly about approximately how many cars do you have?
You know, my grandson here a couple of years ago helped me count, and there are approximately 1,500 vehicles of different types in my basement.
That's a lot of cars.
There's a lot of cars, trucks, airplanes, farm equipment, you name it, whether it's stamped steel, plastic, die-cast metal, which is probably the largest part of my collection.
And you're not limited to cars. I mean, cars are your specialty, but you also have planes, trucks.
Anything to do with transportation.
Nice. Well, tell me what you can about, they're called die-cast metal, but what are they actually made out of?
Originally, they were made out of a zinc composite, and there were problems with the durability of those cars or trucks that they made out of that product, and they would form cracks. Now it's an aluminum type zinc alloy, I believe is what they made, and they've come a long way from when they started in the 20s with the very rudimentary type model. And when you look into the 50s with Tootsie Toy and Corgi, I believe it is.
I mean, they didn't even have interiors. It was just
no. It was an exterior and four rubber tires, and that was it. When you get into I want to say the 80s, early 90s, got into much more detail in 1/25th, 1/18th scale, and very detail-oriented and beautiful construction.
But just to back step a little bit, though, Matchbox came out of England?
Correct, yes.
And that was a brand, right?
That was a brand. And then in the 60s, Mattel started coming out with the Hot Wheels.
Right, because I read that there was Barbie for the girls, and then they wanted to...
Exactly. So they needed a product for the boys, so they came out with Hot Wheels. And when you look to see how that's developed, I was never very much into the small cars. I liked the larger scale models, and focused my time and attention on those. It almost got to be, especially hunting for those, even when the little 1/64 scale cars. It was hard to find them here and there, and you'd want to collect every one of them, and it seemed to be an impossible feat.
Well, something we talk about is, and I ask pretty much everybody that's on my show about how technology has changed everything, and if you could share with us how you saw technology, meaning the internet, change from where you used to go into a store and pick up the car and look at it and hold it. Now you can find anything across the world.
I think half the fun of finding the cars was being able to go, whether it was into a mainline department store, a hobby store, wherever, and to find the model you were looking for, pick it up, carry it out with you. And over the last few years, in so many of the stores, the aisle space for those has just shrunk and shrunk even more. And when I go to look for something these days, it's on the internet, and whether that's a business or eBay or whatever. But it seemed to take a lot of the fun out of it.
I've gone to look for the car itself.
Yes.
It's like a challenge, like with the hunt.
Yes. You know, you don't know what you're going to find when you walk in the store, and you go, you may have read about this in like a trade magazine or something like that, and then you come across it and you go, I've got to take that home.
Yeah. And it used to be where, I mean, with a store, you'd call, do you have this, do you have that? You'd look in the yellow pages. I don't know if kids these days even know what the yellow pages are, but speaking of that, now you mentioned about the 80s, the market and the manufacturers found out that that's who was looking at the cars now as the adults, as more so with the kids. So what can you tell me about that?
Well, I think, you know, the very simplistic models that the kids would buy, but you know, with the adult market, I mean, I could walk into a store and there'd be other men in the toy aisle, and whether it was the smaller die-cast or the larger, and they'd be looking through the different parts of the different hanging blister packs, looking for specific cars. And whether those were just an ordinary vehicle, or even the way they've used advertising to put a company's name or a brand name on a car or a truck and sell it, make money off that, and they're still advertising because you have that vehicle sitting at home on a shelf or on your desk.
Well, I learned an expensive word today, but there's two reasons why, and I'm a perfect example, as most guys are our generation, is you remember a car either that you had or that you, when you were a kid, you saw drive by, especially in the 60s, you know, when cars were all different colors and chrome and all that. You know, now it looks like cars are all gray, white, or black, or whatever the case may be. But that's one reason why our guys our age are buying these, and also, like I said, a car that they would like to get.
Well, it's part of nostalgia, whether it was a car my father had or the Corvette my neighbor had. And back years ago, when you could tell make, model, year of every car.
Oh yeah.
Now they run a car for 7, 8, 10 years with only minor changes. You can't tell one year from another.
And is the die-cast industry making these cars that are out now? You know, current cars?
They come out with the new ones. They're still building some of the older ones. But as a manufacturer, be it Asian, European, or domestic, then they're coming out and making the dies for the newer cars.
And there's the big names out there now, but then I'm reading also that in the late 80s, there was a lot of mergers going on and bankruptcies and.
Yeah, you had Ertl has been very big for a long time. They have gone through several name changes. UT was a big die-cast manufacturer. Today it's Auto Art, it's Kyosho. Mattel still is into manufacturing cars, but I think when you look at the higher up 1/18 scale adult vehicles, I think it's Kyosho and Auto Art.
And then along the way too, I'm finding that, NASCAR, then the 90s, NASCAR just opened up a whole world of things. I mean, the way they advertise on their cars, and then the licensing, you know, if it's tied, I mean, the things that you see on the NASCAR.
You know, with the licensing of those vehicles and every sponsor, large and small, that were on those vehicles, so the advertising effect from that. But the trucks, the trailers, the race cars themselves, the driver figures, it was just an enormous business.
And the thing that I told you many times I'm a big fan of is the garbage trucks, because I was a garbage man at one time, and my prized possession, I don't have it here on today's show, but is the City of Chicago garbage trucks. So that's enough talking about these. What we're going to do when we come back, we're going to take a little break, and we're going to bring back the real stars of the show. Not that Greg's the star, but we're going to take a look at some of the cars out of your collection.
Let's get them set
collection. Up. So thanks for being here, and we'll be right back to look at these fine cars.
We take great pride in our work. I think that is one of the best parts about being Italian is the passion that runs through our veins. You know, it's undeniable.
The Italian-American heritage. Live it, love it, celebrate it.
Welcome back to the show. We're here with Greg Miller, avid die-cast car collector. And what do we got here, Greg? We're going to show the different scales, types of cars?
We were talking
sizes?
about the different scales, and for example, the yellow Cadillac, 69 Cadillac, matchbox size, about 1/64th scale. And then next, right behind it, we have the 1956 Oldsmobile, and that's a 1/25th scale. Next to that is the 1953 Cadillac Eldorado convertible, and that is 1/18th scale. And through the years, I think that we've seen a lot of people collect the matchbox size.
And Matchbox was a brand, but it became so popular at that it was
kind of a generic name.
A generic name, okay.
But now with Hot Wheels, etc., most of my collection is in the 1/25th and the 1/18th scale. And even the changes in production over the years, for example, this car was produced with no interior like we talked about later. So it was just the exterior of the car.
Okay.
As we got into the, let's say, more detailed 1/25th and 1/18th scale, the hood will open, the trunk will open, doors will open. There's an engine inside, more detail in the interior. There are even some die-cast cars like a convertible that the convertible top actually operates.
Okay.
So and of course with all those things, like with the soft top that will go up and down, makes a more expensive model.
Okay. Now, what can you tell me about this Oldsmobile here? That not just the scale, but the particular car.
Well, on this particular car, this was originally built by Johan in 1956. After they had gone out of business, and a company in Detroit called Excel bought their old dies, and they reproduced these in the 80s, and they produced a number of Chrysler products and General Motors products that they had made over the years. The great part about this was I didn't particularly want to pay the value of a real 1956 Oldsmobile vehicle, but I could afford, or I felt I could afford, the remake of it.
Okay, but you told me this was the type of the car that when you bought it full size, they handed you this as a little.
Right, and this particular model is a promo model. They would, when your folks bought a car, they'd hand the child, or they'd say, "Here, sonny, here's your car," and you'd be able to, excuse me, have something to take home and play with. And it was also a gesture of goodwill on behalf of the dealership.
Okay. Now, what do we have here?
Okay, this is a 1955 Bel Air two-door hardtop. It is made by Ertl Company.
You're right about the detail. I mean, it's unbelievable what you can see inside of it.
And when you look at this interior, exterior, this came with the scale model 265 V8, which was the first.
That hood opens up?
Yes. And this was 55 was the very first year for the small block V8, and those cars today, even the small block V8 that's in the new 2014 Corvette, is based historically on that original 265 V8 that came out in 55. That before those years came about, you had Cadillacs and Lincolns. The more expensive cars, they had a V8 engine, but here you had an entry-level Chevrolet that you could have a V8 engine in.
I mean, the detail is unbelievable. But the car's doors open up.
It is just the chassis, the suspension that will work. Even to look at the dashboard, the instrument panel, it's just amazing the detail they can put in. And this car is probably 15 to 20 years old.
And they don't miss a beat, right, on the color?
No, they work with the manufacturers who also license them to the different toy manufacturers.
Okay.
And you know, the ability to get in on what's going on with these cars even before they're introduced to the public. So under sworn secrecy, you know, they
Corvette's just coming out with a new one.
They just came out.
Design 2014.
2014, and they're bringing back the Stingray name that came out in 1963.
Now, what will happen? The die-cast car companies are ready to go. I mean, they get the designs.
There was already.
Simultaneously?
I've already seen a 2014 die-cast Stingray, Corvette Stingray.
And they're not. The real cars are not out yet.
The cars are just starting to be delivered.
Okay. What year do we have here?
This is a 1957. 57 was the first year for the upgrade from the 265 V8 to the 283, and it was the very first year for fuel injection on a domestic built car. Here again, you have a suspension that works, the opening hood, doors, the trunk lid that will open, spare tire. It's just the detail from the instrument panel. It's a very, very beautiful model.
And it's for the guy that can't, like many of us, that can't go out and buy this car, but you can buy this size.
But you
and
can buy
still-
it and enjoy it, and whether it's sitting on a shelf, sitting on your desk, whether it's at home or at work, it's something that you can sit and look at and enjoy, and
Like-
think
there we
about the car that your parents had or a friend had or a neighbor had, and doesn't take up the space, and it brings back a lot of nostalgic
It
memories.
sure does. I mean, you're just looking at these cars here, and it's like seeing them on the street again, you know? What do we got here?
This is a 1962 Bel Air hardtop. Some people refer to it as the bubble top because of the large back window. This vehicle represented those that had a 409 V8, 4-speed on the floor, used by a lot of drag racers.
Now, is this what the term, what I was reading, where a muscle car comes from? It just looks like a nice stock car on the outside, but underneath, what did you say? It has a
It's a
409?
409 cubic inch V8 engine, and was used by a lot of drag racers.
Like the little old lady from Pasadena.
There you go. And whether
If I
it's
could think
Beach
of the lyrics
Boys,
right now, I would tell you the word. What kind of,
Beach
what did
Boys,
she drive?
Jan and Dean,
There you go.
all the songs from that era, and this was a full-size Chevrolet, and of course back then you had the Biscayne, Bel Air, and Impala, but a lot of
Well, I used to remember not to interrupt you, but the
The
Impala had 3 tail lights. Can we turn it around here real quick?
the
right.
Impala had 3 taillights, Bel Airs and Biscaynes had 2 on each side, but the other thing is for a lot of drag racers, they would buy and race the 2-door sedan Bel Air or Biscayne because those vehicles were lighter than a hardtop vehicle.
Okay.
And
Now, what do we have here? You going to switch over to Ford a little bit, are you?
right, this is a 1963 Ford Thunderbird convertible with the Landau cover over the back seat.
That's a beautiful car.
This car came with a 390 V8 4-barrel, and this was used in one of the beach movies, I think Palm Springs Weekend or something like that, where Robert Conrad drove the car that had the back seat covered over with the Landau cover.
It's a beautiful car. Now, was Thunderbirds, was that their answer to Corvette? Because Thunderbird really wasn't a high-performance car, was it?
Well, Thunderbird, when it originally came out in '53, was a 2-seater and remained a 2-seater for 55, 56, and 57. But when you read historically, the 55 Thunderbird is what kept the Corvette in production because General Motors was getting ready to dump that car. But because Ford came out with the 2-seat Thunderbird, they said, we can't stop production. And of
Okay.
course, then it went from 6-cylinder to V8 and different design changes saved that car.
So then when does Mustang fit into all this?
Well, Mustangs came about in the spring of '64, and now in the spring of 14 next year, they'll have the 50th anniversary of the Mustang, and the new generation Mustang will be coming out, and they're going to try to bring it out, April 14th, April 15th, just like they did 50 years ago.
Nice. 50 years, wow.
Isn't that something?
That's scary. Okay, what do we got here?
This is a 1964 Galaxy 500 XL convertible. It was powered by a 427 V8. This car is made by Sunstar, and it details the bucket seats, the console, the floor shifter.
I mean, the fold down, the cover on the convertible is amazing.
It is just, whether it's Kyosho and Auto Art like we talked about before, Sunstar was a lesser model, so to speak, as far as some of the detail goes, but it's a very beautiful vehicle to display.
Oh, man.
And when you look at back in the 60s where vehicles were still changing how they looked from one year to the next. Sunstar made a 63, they made the 64, but like we were talking earlier, every vehicle every year changed, and you could see it coming down the road and go, Yes, that's a 64, that's a 65. Where today, you can look at a vehicle and you know what brand it is, but you don't know what year it is.
Now let me ask you this, because I'm not the expert, you are, but I thought 427 was a Chevy engine, no?
No, they were made by both.
Is that right?
Chevy had a 427 and so did Ford Motor Company.
Interesting. Okay, what do we got here? Mercury?
Okay, this is a 1967 Mercury Cougar. This vehicle is also made by Sunstar. The XR7 version of this car came with a 289 V8, just something over 225 horsepower. But the Mercury Cougar was Mercury's response to the Ford Mustang that came out in the spring of
Even
'64.
though they were the same parent company.
Same
Ford.
parent company, but Mercury wanted their share of that business. And the 67 Mercury was their answer, and of course that same year, with the 67 model year, the Chevrolet Camaro was finally released to the public. So you had this muscle car era where it took really 2.5 model years for Camaro to be released. But you know, Mercury wanted in on this piece of the pie as well.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting is how these are just die-cast small cars, but we're getting the full appreciation of the whole history of the cars. You know, as if we're standing here talking about the real car. It's amazing.
And as an example, like we talked about earlier, some friends were out a few weeks ago, and you know, a gentleman said, "Oh, my brother had that exact car, like with the Mercury Cougar XR7," and it just brings back those memories of when you were younger.
Now, what do we got here?
This is a 1967 Corvette Stingray, and the Stingray was the second generation Corvette that came back out in 1963 and was produced through 1967. This vehicle was a 427 V8 and came with a 4-speed manual transmission or a 2- or 3-speed automatic transmission.
Who would want to get automatic on that car?
People that lived in Chicago.
What does that mean?
With all the traffic,
in the city?
your left leg could get awfully tired going on and off that clutch.
What about the red stripes?
Okay,
tires.
the Stinger stripe on the hood keynoted, you know, the larger engine with the hood scoop. The red stripe tires back in the 60s, when they went away from the wide
Was it only
white walls.
GM that did that?
Pardon?
Was it only GM that had the red stripe
No,
tires?
all the manufacturers had red stripes. You also had a gold stripe, and there were even some
Vogue had the
blue
gold, right?
and blue stripe tires. Like I said, you know, going from those wide white walls of the 50s to the narrow white walls to the red stripe, the gold stripe, the blue stripe.
Oh, there's the Mustang, yeah?
This is a 1969 Mustang Mach 1, and it had a 428 cubic inch V8, and if I remember correctly, I believe this engine came out of was pulled out of a full-size Ford car police unit and dropped into this car.
Is that right?
But the fastback on it, the more or less what I would still call Ram Air, because when you would lift the hood, the Ram Air portion of it stayed on top of the engine.
Oh, so it was, I see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask you too if it's myth or what, but I had a 64 Comet, or Falcon,
Mm-hmm.
and I was told that that was the chassis and that they
Okay.
put the Mustang on right on top of.
A lot of the Falcon was in the Mustang, and that's what it made it a quicker car to come to market with, and it also made it a cheaper car to come to market with because they were able to use so many parts right out of their own bins
That they already had.
that they already had. And there's the other part, because you know, manufacturers are so aware they don't want to be a girl's car. There's nothing wrong with that, but for the volume production, they want a car that's being bought by both men and women. And
Was there cars ever marketed?
Pardon?
Were there cars marketed to women?
Yes, sir. There over
We
the
can
years.
ask that without getting in trouble.
No.
This is-
And
this is
well,
a
and there
documentary,
have
ladies and
there have been over the years, and I think the one I get a kick out of it was a Lavender '56 Dodge. It was produced directly for a female purchaser.
Did they sell?
Very small numbers. Very small numbers.
It's not to say that women weren't driving the muscle cars.
No, but where you had the small 6 cylinders, to the small V8s, to the large big block V8s, etc.
Or as we talked about, the little old lady from Pasadena.
There you go.
Okay. Moving right along here.
This vehicle is a 71 Dodge Challenger, and it came with a 383 Commando. This car is produced by Greenlight, and this car was probably produced, I want to say, about 10 years ago. And there's more detail to it. There's more detail in the interior, and this car was also in 1971 was a official pace car for the Indianapolis 500 race, and this car was produced and it was provided to the race track by a local dealer because they didn't have a factory-sponsored pace car that year. Usually the pace cars come from the factory, all ready to go, and there are several pace cars. It's just not one main one. They're called festival cars, pace cars, that are used in the parades and everything else. And besides the fact that the winning driver of the Indy 500 then is awarded one of those pace cars.
Interesting. Okay. Now,
What you're just
now
bringing out now.
We're leaving the country now?
No, this is a 1992
Corvette?
Dodge Viper.
A Viper, okay.
It's a V10 engine. Did not have roll-down windows. Did not have outside door handles. I don't even believe the very first edition of this had air conditioning. It was a manual transmission. It was a rough and tough hot rod, so to
Are
speak.
they still making
Real
the
muscle
Viper?
car. Yes, they now make, it's more of a coupe version than the open air. They've had several different versions over the years, and just the last one just came out within the last, I want to say 12 to 18 months.
Well, let me ask you, what makes a car more valuable than the next one? Is it like the less that are made, the more expensive it is?
I think what is when they have volume production, and I want to say that you see on a scale of range of 3,000 to 5,000 vehicles of a model produced for the mass market. And then you see those vehicles where they make a special run of maybe only 500, 1,500, maybe up to 2,500. And the extra care, different colors, a little bit more care with production
Pardon me.
would make those
That's my ringtone, but
nice dog.
that's a rough call. Hello. Well, I'm gonna finish up this show. This guy wants to be on my show as well, so.
Wow.
But he does airplanes, so.
Oh, he does airplanes.
Yeah.
I should have
All
brought
right.
my planes.
I'll give you a call back. Yeah, I'm a busy guy. Okay, bye. Okay, well, what we have here, ladies and gentlemen, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
You know, the Brinks truck GMC model, and this is an example we were talking about earlier, where they take different vehicles, cars, trucks. Here's
And you have
an
to
armored
have what's
vehicle.
inside of there to buy these cars.
Right, a lot of money.
Here, listen, I want to thank you for being on this show. Here's some cannolis
Oh,
for you.
thank you.
And I apologize. I mean, you came out to here, and now I have to walk off the show, but I am a busy guy. So thanks for being here. And
Pleasure.
where do people find the cars, real quick? Online and Craigslist?
Online, hobby stores, Craigslist, eBay.
Peace in the Valley.
There you go.
Thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
All right, bye.